Welcome to Justin's room. On the screen is a slide that says Justin's room, our story to tell. Welcome. Every third Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. EST. There is a line drawing of Justin by Teddy based on a photo by Tom Olin on the right. There is a QR code on the bottom right. It says info on future and past events, registration, playlist, and donation opportunities available at bit.ly/Justin's room. The J and the R in Justin's room are capitalized. Register at bit.ly/register Justin, and the R and the J in register Justin are capitalized. Co-sponsored by Disability History and Culture Collective, DHACC, and I Love You Lead On Community. Justin's room, our stories to tell. It's the same slide format as the last one. The text here says Justin Dart and his wife Yoshiko took road trips multiple times across the country, sitting with disabled people in every state to hear their challenges, successes, and hopes. They brought these powerful stories to Congress, helping to turn shared dreams into the Americans with Disabilities Act. Bring your words, your poems, your art, your dance, your music, or video, whatever feels right for you. About 8 minutes. If you want to share, let us know ahead of time, or just come and join the Zoom. The mic will stay open as long as folks have something to say. Every story is welcome. Email leadon@iloveyou-leadon.com with any questions. Info on future and past events, registration, playlist, and donation opportunities available at bit.ly/Justin's-room, J and R capitalized. The QR code is in the bottom right. And again, it says co-sponsored by Disability History and Culture Collective, DHACC, and I Love You Lead On Community. And tonight, this slide is the same format as the last one, but it has tonight's date, January 23rd. Actually, that's wrong. It's January 21st, 2026 at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And this month, stories about Yoshiko and Justin Dart, featured speakers, Becky Ogle and Tony Quello. And Tony, I'm going to ask you to pronounce that because I've heard many different pronunciations of your last name and I'm now totally confused.
You have it absolutely correct.
Okay, excellent. So a little information about our accessibility and things. Contact us for help or accessibility requests. If you need any help accessing the event or want to request a voice option during the presentation, email us at leadon@iloveyou-leadon.com. And some Zoom etiquette and access information. During the presentation, all Zoom attendees will be muted to support access and reduce background noise. If you need to use voice to communicate during the presentation, email us and we'll arrange a separate voice space just for that. After the presentation ends, we'll open up mics for conversation, unrecorded, one voice at a time as usual. Chat comments will be read aloud to provide access. If you don't want your chat comment read aloud, please use private message to one of the hosts. Accessibility information. ASL is usually provided for the presentation and will be spotlighted. And if and when she arrives, we will do that for tonight. We apologize to anyone who is expecting it and it's not here. Auto captions are available and can be viewed on screen or as a transcript. In the Zoom toolbar, there's a CC option. If it's not there, click the 3 dots for more options and locate it. The ability to show, hide, or adjust captions is also there, as well as the option to view captions as a transcript. And this is a note about our ASL interpreter who is usually here. In keeping with the I Love You Lead On and DHACC's goal of making conversations about disability available and accessible to all, we invite our ASL interpreter to participate fully, asking questions and joining the discussion if and when they have them. Justin's Room sessions are recorded. This is our first one. All Justin's Room sessions will be recorded and will be available on our playlist within a few days with the corrected captions and transcripts. Once we get it uploaded, obviously it's not there just yet, but you will be able to find the playlist on the Justin's Room website at bit.ly/Justin's Room, J and R capitalized, and there's a QR code on your screen. And we would like to invite you to help make this space accessible. I Love You Lead On Community and all of its various projects are volunteer-led. We have a variety of ways you can support our efforts to provide full access. Our work includes the Disability History and Culture Collective, known as DHACC, this space, Justin's room, Judy's room, Justin's room, and other events on the horizon. There's a QR code on the bottom right, and you can donate at iloveyou-leadon.com/donate. And this is a new slide. We'd like to make sure that you all know about our email groups. This is how you can join our email groups if you're not already on them. Disability History and Culture Collective has 2 Google groups for disability-related conversations. DHACC Disability Museum, which is focused on museums, exhibits, and collections, formal, informal, or in progress, and Disability Advocates Lead On for general disability community discussions, events, resources, and current issues. You may choose one or both depending on your interests. For instructions and more information, visit bit.ly/DHACC-Google Groups. DHACC is all capitalized, and the G in Google and the G in Groups is capitalized. And there is a QR code on the right to get to that page. And for updated information, schedule and registration, I think we've already done this, but it's iloveyou-leadon.com/Justin or bit.ly/Justin's room, J and R capitalized. And past episodes will soon be available at the playlist on YouTube. All right, let's get started. I am going to stop my share. Okie dokie. And Susan, would you like to?
Yes, so Tony is, we would not have the ADA without Tony. There are a lot of people that were a part of making the ADA happen, getting it passed, getting it written, but Tony was an integral part of that, and he and Justin were definitely in it together. So he probably has stories about Justin that have never been told because he probably has so many of them. But we will let him decide which stories he wants to tell, and after he's done a few, if others have stories about Justin or Yoshiko or other kinds of stories, they can join us. But Tony gets first crack at getting us excited about who Justin was and who Yoshiko is.
Thank you very much. I'm really privileged to be on this call because I love Justin so much for what he did for our community. Most people know how active he was, but I say publicly all the time that if it wasn't for Justin, we wouldn't have an ADA. He and Yoshiko went around the country trying to build up support for legislation. And when we adopted it, or excuse me, when I introduced the first bill, if it wasn't for the grassroots support that Justin had activated and cultivated, getting the legislation through would have been very difficult. It was difficult in the House of Representatives as it was, but having that grassroots support all over the country made it possible for us to legislate legislation. But the combination is what made the ADA possible. So I give Justin and Yoshiko, but Justin the credit for the ADA. The stories on Justin is that he never gave up. He was an activist, didn't mind speaking up to power, talked to anybody that he felt was necessary. He was a Republican. In our movement, it was bipartisan, but obviously there were people on the Republican side in certain areas who were strongly opposed. The White House was President Reagan and President Bush were involved, and Papa Bush, as I call him, was the most aggressive for us in that he had a child who died of a disability. So he understood our movement, and Justin was very close to the White House individuals. And at meetings, he would be in his own positive way, would be very aggressive and saying something has to be done. And so I was involved in several meetings with him. His uh, enthusiasm to move forward and pushing me to do more, always very positive and very good. So I loved him for it. There's a lot of stories. I'm not sure how important those are actually. But most importantly was his willingness to talk to people at the White House, staff at the White House, about how important this was and promote and push and shove. And all that was critical for our movement. If there's any comments or concerns, questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Tony, this is Sharon. Are there any particular stories that you can recall that you'd like to share with us?
Um, Sure, I'm was picking my brain over the last hour to see. The only ones that I can think of was at the White House. We had John Sununu, who was chief of staff to Papa Bush, who was pushing the president to veto the legislation. So you had some of the staff there that were strongly opposed, but then you had others that were aggressively supportive. And Justin would be in those meetings demanding as to why it was important to get it done. The number of us out there who needed our basic civil rights. But he was aggressive in those meetings in his kind, positive way. But his kind, positive way was very impactful because he didn't raise his voice. He was just persistent. And that's really what helped us a lot. I never knew a time in all the meetings I had with him where he got mad. I can tell you that he always was persistent, however. And he had a demeanor about him of, of credibility, respect, all those things that are important. And he used it to fairly well. The other thing, as we all know, um, I think the funny thing was is that he insisted that he had to wear his hat. And his hat has become a symbol of our community, as everybody knows. But in these meetings, he insisted on having the hat on, and all those things were so uh, colorful when you look back on it. But the symbol that he brought to the movement is what I will always respect and admire of him.
How did you guys celebrate when the ADA was passed?
Well, as most of you know, there was a question of should we have it in the White House somewhere, downtown somewhere. And the president basically said, no, we're going to have it on the South Lawn and we'll have thousands of people there. And if any of you were there, it was one of our hottest days. So much so that the White House brought out bottles of water and so forth for those that were having trouble with the heat. And of course, all of you have seen the photo, I'm sure. Justin was on the makeshift podium that they put up on the South Lawn when the president signed the legislation. I think that, well, let me go a different way. The president, this is Papa Bush, the president had extreme high regard for Justin and his family, the Dart family. Uh, he knew Justin's father, but the Dart family as well. But so having Justin on the podium was very restricted. Who was on it? I think it was only 4 people or 5 people. I can't remember right now, but 4 or 5 people were there. And it's a symbol of just the role that Papa Bush felt that Justin played in those meetings. I'll go back in those meetings, having somebody of the stature, his stature, and his willingness not to argue, his willingness to repeatedly bring up why it was important for those to have access, for those of us not to be discriminated against, those of us to be given the opportunity uh, I like to say, and he would say, just give us the opportunity to fail. We'll prove that we can succeed. But it was that whole attitude in those meetings that was critical for us. In the in the House of Representatives, when we were moving the legislation, Justin would be in any meetings that we needed or had with different groups, business groups, unions, and so forth. But again, in all those meetings, he was persistent. People, to a great extent, had a hard time arguing with him because of his stature. And I think that's one of the things that we should know and appreciate the role that he played. There's really no particular story that I have except letting you know of all the meetings that he participated in, the leadership that he provided.
Hi, hi, Gordon Fuller here from Hawaii. Just wanted to say thank you so much for bringing this to us. It's an interesting thing to think about how historic the moment was that you're speaking of. It's just an extraordinary moment in history. And in light of that, to be in 2026 at the first year of the Trump presidency and to see what's become of what was once the Republican Party and how now it has all of the people that are labeled as such in fear of their lives to go against the situation. And so when I think of how Justin was inspired by his visit to the orphanage in Vietnam, and now today, with our government refusing any kind of asylum to people with disabilities, and in the way that we're treating people with disabilities when they're caged by the INS, I have to say, what a contrast. Please share with me what you would about Justin's experience and what he said about his time visiting the orphanage in Vietnam, how that changed him.
I can't tell you that, Gordon, because I don't know, and he never talked about it in front of me, so I can't do that. But I'll comment on what you said. The problem that we had then was to convince folks that it was bipartisan and bicameral, meaning the House and Senate. And we had great leadership in the Senate, as you probably know, and that you had Bob Dole with a disability. You had Ted Kennedy with a sister who died of a disability, a son who had his leg amputated because of cancer. And then we had Tom Harkin with a brother was hearing impaired. And we also had Orrin Hatch. Orrin was from Utah. When I testified on the Senate side, he told me, he said, I just want you to know that in my church, you're considered an angel of God. and I will help in any way I can. And
Mm.
it was great. Here's a very conservative Republican, and he got attacked by some of the conservatives for being so aggressive for us. But that was the Senate side. And on the House side, and I'm saying this only because of the circumstances. On the Senate side, you had these individuals who had disabilities or involved in disability who were open about it, of course. On the House side, at that time, I was the only one who talked about my disability. And it is reflective of what was happening at that time, Gordon, and that the stigma was so strong there that a lot of people were afraid to come out and say something and what it might do for their career.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons I was so aggressive and always have been in my career, to not be afraid to say that I have epilepsy and to speak up to people of power. You have to convince people of power that it's important that they do that. And Justin was part of it. Now, today, we have a president who's made fun of our community. We have a president who is permitting different agencies and departments of government to eliminate disability rights and eliminate disability programs. I tell people all the time that when you vote for president, make sure you know who they're going to support as attorney general and who that person's going to appoint as head of the Civil Rights Division. Because the ADA is only a piece of paper, and it only works when somebody wants to enforce it. It does not work if the president doesn't want it enforced. And so we have a situation today where it's the first time since it was adopted that we have a president who is not enforcing or willing to enforce the ADA. That's very, very sad. And the thing I worry about, Gordon, is that there may be attempts as we go along here to cut back on not only other civil rights, but our civil rights. And that's very, very concerning to me.
It is one of the remarkable things is that we have 70 million people now estimated to be the population of the US with disabilities. And then we always have to remember that they have families and friends, at least
right.
two, you would think. So we're well over half the US population affected by the challenges that are faced by people with disabilities. And to think that in the last election, I can't remember one news commentator, one pundit, one reviewer of any of these political stances going after what's the story about people with disabilities. Our issues are not discussed. We were not given any forums. We had no real standing in the election. And to see the number of few votes that elected the most unbelievably horrible person in the history of the world, we're, we're still on the outside. And I'm personally really blaming the Democratic Party for having someone like Trump. You know, it's you can't defeat that guy, really, really. You know, what happened to engaging with us? We are the people that could be the standard bearers for most of the issues that are affecting the poor and disadvantaged people in our country. To me, we're an untapped resource and an asset that the political people should really get aware of very quickly.
Well, I think part of your comments are really true. A lot of Democrats didn't vote in the last election because they felt that Kamala would not do X or Y or Z. My point was, I can tell you that I know what Trump will do, and that's not going to be helpful to us. And so, but a lot of folks did not support us, and look at what we got. You know, part of the problem that we've had over the years is that we tried very hard in the beginning when Dukakis was running for president to get him to talk about disabilities, and he did to some extent. We then got when the Papa Bush and who was Republican, I forget now. But anyway, to have a disability policy that they publicly put out, and they did. And so we've had that ever since then, except this past election. And then also when there's been the debates, presidential debates, getting a reporter to even ask a question about disability policy. I personally, and I know Justin as well, try to get the reporters to do something in regard, just ask a basic question so that the national audience would be able to hear what that policy was and so forth. And we had uh, uh, one of the reporters that was hosting the debate at my alma mater in Los Angeles, by the way. And she she has a son with a disability. And so she felt that it might be a little inappropriate for her, but she got somebody else to ask the question on the panel. And that was the first time that a question on disability was ever asked in a presidential debate. And all those things, Gordon, is what troubles me, and that even though we do have 50% of our population that either has a disability or is impacted by those of us with a disability, that people don't really pursue our vote or go after our vote and so forth. And that's
Yeah.
a sad commentary. That's a real sad commentary.
Were there conversations about psychiatric disability in the meetings to draft the ADA, which were not reflected in the legislation that passed?
Well, I don't remember that, but I don't think so. The as you know, that it basically covers, the ADA covers all disabilities until the Supreme Court ruled that it did not cover intellectual disabilities and so forth. So we had to go through the ADA Amendments Act to, in effect, reverse the Supreme Court decision to say that it covered all disabilities, mental, et cetera. And so to a great extent, when people say, did it cover this disability or that? No, it didn't explicitly. It just said all disabilities and described your inability to do certain things, but nothing specific about a particular type of disability.
Okay.
And I might add to that, that's true of all civil rights legislation. People always say, well, why wasn't there something about a quote on employment or whatever? It's civil rights legislation is not that. It's basically a law that says you can't discriminate and gives the federal government an opportunity to enforce it, depending on which title. I won't get into a bunch of minutia here, but in Title II is basically covers government, and Title III covers business. So I was very involved in an effort just recently for people that are hearing impaired, sight impaired, physically impaired in regards to access to the internet. I basically worked on that for 13 years. And finally, President Biden issued a rule that said that those communities had to have access to the internet. But that was to Title II, which was state, local, federal government. And that is basically explaining that the ADA did cover this. See, I have felt for all the time that Commerce Clause in ADA basically covered anything dealing with business, and obviously the internet is part of that. But some of the courts ruled against us. And so we had to get the rule established. We did. And Title III is about businesses. And we only did Title II because Title III would have been a problem. And so we did Title II to get that started. And that when we have our next Democratic president, we have to go after Title III. And my problem today is that I don't think we could ever get legislation with the way the makeup of the Congress. But we can get a Democratic president to include Title III in our rulemaking.
What was the Supreme Court decision and the ADA amendments?
Yeah, basically it said the Supreme Court decided, I'll put it in layman's terms, if you couldn't see it, it wasn't a disability. And so all intellectual disabilities, I was one of the primary authors of the ADA, and I testified everywhere regarding, talked about the discrimination I went through in regards to my epilepsy. So to have a Supreme Court say in their decision that the ADA did not cover intellectual disabilities, et cetera, it's inappropriate. That is what the Congress intended. So when we introduced the ADA Amendments Act, it passed overwhelmingly in the House and the Senate quickly. And an interesting tidbit here is that Papa Bush signed the original, W signed the ADA Amendments Act. So the Bush family was very involved in disabilities. Papa Bush's daughter with a disability. And the tie to Justin, the Bush family very close to Justin Dart.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Alan, would you like to ask your question?
Hi, Tony. I've met you before, and I really value what you've done and what you did. I love the fact that just the new stories from all over the country to present the case, basically. And I do agree with what you just said, which is like those invisible disabilities, like need laws passing, like by a Congress or by a government that includes them as well. I think I knew Justin as well, and I still know Yoshiko. But I just think, what's the next step, basically, Tony? I mean, me and you are probably about the same age, or maybe you're younger or older. I don't know. But
I'm Alan. I'm 83, so no, I'm not hiding anything here.
Yeah, well, I'm 73, so you're
Hey, you're a young man then.
Yeah. So I mean, well, I'm about to go next week to Bob Kafka's memorial.
Oh yeah.
Adapt, and the last time I saw Justin, I was handcuffed to his wheelchair, right?
Yeah.
So, and he was like, Kafka came up and said, "Wouldn't it be great if they arrested Justin and he died in jail?" I mean, he was being flippant. He was totally flippant. That's Kafka, It's like, wow, wouldn't that be a great story, Like, and we get money for as a person tomorrow, right? So I do have a lot of good memories about Justin, and I have a lot more about Yoshiko, who helped us launch Disability Pride in Philadelphia, right? And she came for a long time. She doesn't now. She's getting up there, but when my wife died last year, she gave me some money for our daughter's college fund, basically. So she's such a sweet person. I think Yoshiko is up there with me about, she's quiet and behind the scenes, but she's so supportive. But Tony, what do you think? I mean, at 83, oh, by the way, me and Sharon know each other very well, right? We work together. We're trying to get this disability inclusive curriculum around the country, which is this is a new idea. Well, it's not a new idea now. We've been doing it for 7 years, but why don't we teach K-12 kids disability? Then we get a whole generation who get it. They get it. I'm not talking about one disability. I'm talking about across disability. Why don't we do that? And so we have a great website, which I'm sure Sharon will put in the chat, which is like something we're trying to get teachers involved in, right? And when we had them involved, the results are absolutely great. They love it. The kids love it. Disabled kids love it. It's like, yeah, let's not talk about disability, right? While you're in school. So anyway, what do you think? So here's my question then. 83, right? You're getting up there. So what do you think would happen? What do you think should happen in the future? Well, how apart from this Trump thing, because obviously Trump, but what do you think the movement should be talking about?
Well, there's a couple of things I'd like to say that are positive about the history of the ADA and the involvement is that, as you probably know, Alan, that there are now over 50 different countries that have an ADA. In other words, that recognize that those of us with disabilities should have our basic rights. And so it's all of them are different, but basically having a country acknowledge that is so important. We started that. The ADA started that movement internationally, and I think that's really great. The second thing is that what is happening right now is exciting in that we have a gentleman with a disability running for the Senate in Iowa. We have an individual running for lieutenant governor in New Hampshire, all with disabilities. There's other individuals with disabilities. They come to me, obviously trying to get support, which I try to give them support. But it's exciting to me that not only do we have an ADA, not only there's some positive movement, we have people that are openly disabled who are aggressively showing that they can do what anybody else can do.
Yeah.
And that's exciting to me to in the past, you basically didn't speak up about your disability. You didn't run for office if you had a disability. Now that's happening more and more, and that's exciting to me. That's ultimately the way to change things. But boy, it's taken us a long time to get there. I remind people, Alan, that people in the Black community, Hispanic community, and so forth, they got their basic rights in the 60s.
Yeah.
Then you had basically women got their basic rights in the 70s. Then you go to the gay community, they got their rights. And I always say now it's our turn. It's our turn to get our basic rights. Those people struggled for years. And I assume you would agree with me that the Black community still gets discriminated against. Women still get discriminated against. Gays still get discriminated against. So there's never going to, I shouldn't say never, it's difficult to get people to totally accept us. But the reason that we can be successful is if we fight. We're willing to speak up. We're not willing to back down, and we take on whoever is a problem. And I, for one, am willing to speak up and speak up a lot, sometimes maybe too much. But I think it's important to be aggressively. And I say all the time, Alan, if you don't love yourself for what you do and what you stand for, we have a problem because we have to go out and convince people that they should be supportive. I need to get off of my political gun there.
And I think that's why I love Bob Kafka because he really organized Rev Up. Like disabled people need to get out and vote.
That's right. That's right.
If you start making excuses like, oh my God, I haven't got transport, organize, don't mourn, organize, as they say. So I think that's really true. And I love you, Tony. I have met you. You probably haven't recognized me, but I've met you, and God bless for what you did and everything. Right, thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Well, I do want to say, the Gordon again, Hawaii, I wanted to say, indeed, if it weren't for Justin, there'd be 50 countries in the world that would still be thinking about, wouldn't it be great, if we had some ability to support our elders and our aging population. As you're probably aware, there are 28 first world countries that are aging so rapidly, some of them even more than the United States, like Japan and other first world countries, including China. And the embrace of the world of technology today, AI in particular, let's throw in even robotics, oddly enough, is seemingly looking for trying to figure out why this is great society and what we possibly achieve with it. And our group of people is somehow not in the loop. Our needs are not being considered. What what is sadness? Europe and Asia, people are really working hard to make sure that this happens. They're looking at assistive technologies, and so we're falling behind very dramatically. So this is hurting industry, in my opinion, as a tech entrepreneur. We're being held back by the ignorance of the corporate culture, which has permeated all of our media, which was always terrible about covering us and continues to be missing in action. So for
Well,
me,
Gordon, I'll make only one comment on that.
yeah,
If our community isn't willing to stand up and fight, it's never going to happen for us. So we can't, sit there and blame this and that.
yeah,
I just think we have to fight. I've never shied away from speaking up to power. I took on the Pope because of discrimination against people with epilepsy not being able to become priest. Of the last six presidents, I've stood up to five of them. You know which one I didn't do. And so, but we have to willing to fight for who we are. And at times our community doesn't do that. And
yeah,
so look at, if we would all get together on a particular issue, one of the reasons we got ADA passed is because there wasn't a breakdown in our community. It wasn't just the blind fighting it or people with epilepsy fighting it. It was everybody. But then we get to other issues and we break up. We're not a total community. People of color were people of color. They knew they were of color and they fought for what they wanted, and so on. So I agree. There are people who aren't willing to help us, but
yeah.
we 50% of the population. If we organized, got together, and were tough about it, they'd respond. But we have a problem there, and I am aggressive about saying that. Gordon, thank you for being on the call. I have to get off. I'm late for a meeting, but I just wanted to let everybody know just how much I respected and loved Justin and Yoshiko. And so hopefully we all remember just what a great, great advocate he was. So thank you very much for having me on today.
Thank you. Aloha.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
And we can never forget your contribution also, Tony. Really,
Thank you.
truly. We wouldn't have the ADA without you. So thank you for that.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Oh, that was amazing. Do others have stories they would like to tell about? We'll start with stories about Justin. If anyone has any stories about him or Yoshiko, and then people can tell any story that right now is in your heart you need to tell. We're ready to listen.
Hi, this is Cindy Jones, and in those days I was the publisher of Mainstream Magazine, and Justin came to San Diego, which is where I live, and he was coming to a meeting, and he invited me to lunch. And what you need to know is when you're invited to lunch with Justin, he never eats, which is kind of weird, but that's the way that's the way it is, and was. And he asked me. He said, we're thinking about doing this bill for disabilities, Americans with Disabilities Act, and this was probably 87-ish, and he said, uh, I said, "Are you serious?" I said, "This is a Republican administration. It's not exactly, um, you know, usually friendly for us." And I said, "But if you think you can get it through, we'll support you." And so
Wow.
every, yeah, and so for every month of the magazine from those days on, there was always an ADA article or focus or question or editorial, or I mean, every month it almost internally it was like, um, so what's our ADA angle this month, but that year when he invited me to lunch, his wife Yoshiko asked me because they'd gotten a transport to the hotel, and I had a van, and so she said, could I go take her to a grocery store to get food for Justin? And I thought, oh, I didn't know what he was going to get, but I mean, I thought, wow, Justin Dart, what's he going to have? Well, basically, it was vegetarian, and it was like we went to this health food store and got like, I'm going to say it was like 5 pounds of bean sprouts. I mean, I'll never forget it because it was like so shocking, but
Mm.
he was, um, that was kind of what he ate. Um, and Yoshiko was um, so supportive of the community and of Justin, and kind of behind the scenes mostly. I want to piggyback on something that Tony Coelho said, and that was that, about the Black community and the gay community and the women's community. We are part of all those communities.
Yeah.
Right.
We are part of all those communities, and we need to speak up. And I'm going to say we did we did we did uh, media work for a while, and there was a group called Unity, which was for all the different, like the Native American journalists and the Black journalists and the women. Well, they didn't have a disability journalist. We were basically a few of us doing disability journalism, and when we kind of pushed our way in, they didn't, they basically, this was my take on it, were so opposed to including us. Basically, they said that we weren't part of that. And then they changed the name and moved on. And so, um, I mean, this wasn't little things. This was a big journalism stuff.
Yeah.
And so I would say people really don't want disability. They don't want to see their future. Maybe they don't want to see their present, but it's up to us to really raise our voices. And I mean, all those groups, if you add all those numbers together, I mean, we're like almost 100% of the population. um so I think that it's, I think we need us right now. We as the nation need us to really be forward. um that there's a jillion stories about Justin. One day we went to, my husband and I were in DC for some meeting, and he invited us over to his apartment, and as anybody who knew him at the time and worked in the movement, um, he he had gotten, I think it was the Medal of Honor, is that right? And so he would get it out, and he took a picture, he put it all around your neck. So I wore his medal, and he took a picture of me with his medal. And anyone else who went to his apartment had this opportunity, because he said, this isn't just mine. This is yours. This is for all of us. And it was, I mean, now I get kind of misty-eyed because that was the way he was. If you were ever at anywhere where he spoke, um, the preface to what he said was always pointing out, well, there's Bob Kafka and there over there, and there's, and he would name everybody in the crowd. I mean, everybody in the crowd. That's who he was. And one time I saw him making notes before he was about to go on the stage, and I can't remember where it was, but he was making notes, and I thought, wow, he's writing his notes for his speech. No, what he was doing was looking around the audience, making sure he would name everybody he could name. Um, and that's how you build the community, is not focusing on yourself, but by focusing on the people that are there. And that was his great skill. He would ask you to do something and you really could never say no. Um, but but he was just that way. I want to say one other thing about his trips around the country
Let
to
me say
get
one thing.
stories.
Let me
What?
say one thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Heroes like Bob Kafka. I used to be able to impersonate that speech. Heroes like Johnny Gajando. Heroes like Gussie James. Heroes, like with
Yeah.
Sidney Jones. I remember him talking about heroes, and you're totally right. Yeah.
Yeah.
My voice is going now, but I used to have a pretty good impression of that. Right? But yeah, it was so much his speech. Yeah.
And when he was going around the country, getting these stories, really what was happening was that he was educating people of what discrimination was.
Yeah.
Because all of us, so you couldn't go in the front door, you went in the back door, blah, 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 whatever. You couldn't get in. That's just the way it was if you had a disability. You didn't think of it as discrimination. You just thought of it as the way things were. So by him having people speak these things out loud, other people heard, that happened to me too. That happened to me too. And so it really was part of educating us on what discrimination was and what we needed, where we were and what we needed to do. And with that, I'm going to say thank you for having this space.
Oh, that's great. Cindy, thank you.
Welcome.
I think we have to take what Justin gave us, right, as, who he was and what he's done. And we need to move it forward. Right? We're not talking now. I mean, I think we should protect the ADA, no doubt about that. And what I didn't say in my first thing was that inspired us in England and the UK to get the DDA in 1995. And that was based on, as I was said, was like, yeah, it was the first time in the whole world that our government recognized discrimination. But this discrimination is still going on with many different groups of people, right? From many different identities. So we need to keep working on that. And, I mean, whatever you're doing and wherever you are, right? Think about what you're going to do next, basically. I think that's all we can do at the moment on this conversation. But what are you going to do next to remove that? We're in a different world. We have social media, Facebook, blah, blah, blah. We have a president texting all the time. So what are we going to do to change that? I don't think it's always about getting on the streets like I did and getting arrested like I did. But that's part of it. But it's also like so many other jobs. It's like Bob Kafka. I think I can't remember all the things, but there was a pitchfork approach where there was 4 strands. I think it was 4. And if you go on the GAP website, I think it's the 101 for activism, you can find what it is and find which piece of the fork you want to be in, right? Because it's the legal fork, it's the bureaucratic fork, it's the activism fork. I can't remember the third one. But what I'm saying is, there's a place for anybody, right, in driving our disability rights and justice forward, basically.
Alan, I think I quoted you this week because there was in San Diego, they are kind of making it impossible to park if you have a disability. They're doing one thing, and all of a sudden there's nowhere you can park. And I think you did a song called something about creating a cripple-free zone.
Oh yeah.
A few years back. many years ago.
I think that was my first point of activism. Actually, it's the first time I thought I might get arrested. But yeah, that was my first ever, way back. We're talking about '88, I think, 1988. That's the time where I organised a non-violent civil disobedience, basically, and it worked in the end. We had people who went, who got parking tickets and refused to pay them, and then they had to show up in court, but the court was inaccessible. So, I mean, I won't go on about it, but it was it was a really good way of using our wheelchairs, if you like, and the lack of access to make our point.
Nika, you have a prepared something. You want to do that now?
Sure. I don't know if it'll be, I think while listening to what everyone else was saying, since I'm in a new space, I was ready to kind of throw what I was going to present out the window, but I would still like to share it. I'm new to these spaces since the pandemic. And I, well, yeah, I have this book that I wrote as somebody who was diagnosed with schizophrenia in 2021, in part because I was interested in, what journalism of COVID-19 would mean from a, critical perspective. So I was experiencing some of the symptoms. And so, that was it snowballed or spiraled into an 11-day hospitalization that has had, the consequences that are attendant to that very, very stigmatizing experience. Although it is not always it is always also not always like that. It can also be, a means of connecting with people. So there are, good and bad sides to, having an identity foisted upon someone or oneself. And so I wasn't really identifying as an artist before. I was a writer, and I was, writing whatever I needed to write in order to pay my rent, basically. And then, obviously nobody wants to give me money to write. So I began identifying as an artist again. Both of my parents are visual artists. That's how we moved to the United States. And because nobody would publish me, I began publishing myself online. And the first thing I published last year in February was kind of scientific essay about what that diagnosis means. And then I went to something just like much more personal, much lighter. And then I went back to my kind of roots in theater in Chicago, which is where I'm living. I'm in my parents' basement. And I devised an asynchronous audio piece of people who are talking to each other as if during the pandemic, and in some cases they talk about current events in that way, in recording remotely though. And so I edited it together, so it's like visual art but as a sonic experience. And that's something that probably is one of the reasons I didn't pursue visual art, was because in the United States I was aware of disability in a way that I wouldn't have been in the place that I'm from, where that conversation is, just not articulated very well. Not that it's fueled by hate, but however, it just doesn't have any sophistication to be, partly because there's not much diversity. And so I think being aware of the ADA when I was a child, I was like, well, if I were going to make visual art, what would that mean for people who hadn't access to that sense? And I am not sure whether it's sort of an accessible product at all, because it's very expensive. It's like $50. So it's almost like a concept. So I'm finding this like very intriguing and hopefully, generative, productive, happy, ultimately tension between, whatever disability means from the standpoint of psychiatric diagnosis with the codified needs of access for like discrete subject positions, like that have like very fleshed out protocols for accommodations.
Can I talk to you about that? My other name is Johnny Crescendo. So I was, and with my voice, I'm not anymore, but I was a singer-songwriter. So I understand about artists a little bit, right? Not these days. I don't know what we're doing right now. But what I can tell you is this, right? But before I actually started writing stuff that people would like, right? And I'm talking like I'm talking over 50 years ago. I'm talking 60 years ago. When I was 14, I just wrote poetry, which was like, for me. And then we got into the 60s and 70s, it was like, don't be commercial, don't be commercial. So I still kept writing poetry for me, right? But in the end, I met people who were doing poetry, who were performing it. I mean, you probably don't, I'm from England, so John Cooper Clarke was one of my inspirations, and he was a stand-up poet and comic, still going, by the way. You can Google him. But not him, but I realized that as well as poetry, I could write lyrics. Does that make sense? And when I wrote lyrics, I started to write about who I am and what I felt. And then I started to write lyrics about when I met other people, like what Justin Dart was doing and what we've been talking about. He's like, how do other people feel like, with my impairment, if you like, How do other people feel with your condition? And write for them as well. Write for them, right? Do your art, not just you, like I did for 20 years. Start doing art for a wider audience. I don't know if that makes sense. And I'm not saying you should do it. It's up to you. But I think the way to I got a feeling right, Nico, that you want to have the expressions that you want to make go to a wider audience. And within the disability movement, I've been all over the world with what I did, right? So using disability as your audience isn't a bad idea, right? It really isn't, right? But we don't have to think about it all the time, Sometimes I write love songs, and you go, hey, Johnny's in love, he's having sex. It's just a love song, It's like, that's fine, and sometimes I write songs about strong women I've been in love with, sometimes I write about issues, that I feel about like access and stuff. But what I'm trying to tell you is like, I'm not saying unique, but there's a slot for you in that field about saying I'm a disabled person, right? I have experiences. I'd like to convey them to other people. That's what artists do, right? Right? I mean, but in the end, that's what I said. I didn't. I was writing poetry for myself. But in the end, you want to get out there. And if you want to get out there, you have to think about how you convey the messages that are inside your head to everybody else. I mean, it's great to meet you. It really is great to meet you.
I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing you just told me. Yeah, it connects with what you shared about your profession as a singer-songwriter, because even though you weren't necessarily singing the way that we traditionally think singing occurs, like I could see what singing means. Like it's like this storytelling that has these waves, and then it draws the person in at the end, and like puts a smile on their face. It's really powerful. Thank you.
One of the things that came out of the COVID-19 for me is sort of in some ways the reverse of what you're describing, in that I became entirely a part of the online community. I used to be a person who was always out and about with people, and my disability became homebound during the pandemic. Not because of it, but just happened to be the same time. And if it wasn't for online communities, I never would have survived. And so that transition from being a person who was always sort of touch hungry. I mean, I was always with people and always organizing with people in the streets, to now being somebody who's in bed, and my only connection with people really is online. It's a different kind of intimacy, in some ways much closer, because people share things online that they would never share with you face to face. It gives you a sort of cover in a way, that allows you to be more honest. But then there's also the people that are online that are untruthful and have whole personas that aren't real. So it's a double-edged sword, but I'm finding my online communities for me are incredibly important. I mean, I wouldn't survive without them at this point. They've become my life in a way.
I get it.
So do others have stories they would like to tell about Justin, about Yoshiko, about themselves?
I'll say one thing about Justin, right? And it's the same with my dear departed friend who died just over Christmas, Bob Kafka. At the end, the first time I really kind of got to know Yoshiko was when we installed his wheelchair in the what was it? I'm sorry, I'm getting tired. But
Smithsonian.
no. It was in Philadelphia. It was
Oh.
the National
Constitution Center.
Thank you, Sharon. Right, it was the National Constitution Center, and we had a ceremony where he came in and the governors and people spoke. My wife spoke and stuff, right? But that was really the first, apart from my day almost getting arrested with him, that was like one of the first times I met him. And I've known Yoshiko uh, very closely since 2012. Uh, and she's such a wonderful person. And, you know, I mean, do you realize that Justin Dart invented Tupperware? I mean, that is like so amazing. Like, that the guy who like, helped you put things in the fridge, he's Justin Dart, basically. It's such an amazing story. But I mean, Yoshiko, I just absolutely love. I mean, I can't get her to come out anymore. I kind of email her every couple of weeks saying, are you sure you're okay? Basically, because I want to know if she's okay or not okay. And if she's not okay, I wanna, see what I can do. Not sure what I can do, but I mean, I want to know. It's just one of those things. And I mean, one of my favorite books is his Dark Materials. I don't know if anyone's ever read it, but one of the biggest lines in that is "Tell them stories." Right? It is that is a great way that we can move forward. And Justin did that in every state, every state. And he said, "Tell me your story." And I think that's the way, that's one of the ways, only one of the ways, that we can get things done, to have people tell their stories. And that way, whatever that is, whether it's a kid from K to 12, which is what I'm working on, we need to hear their stories. We just do, whether it's good or bad, we just need to hear it. I can think of an eighth grader who has no idea about disability, no idea at all, right? And they can tell their story, and then we can say, why aren't you learning about disability, right? Why aren't you? No, I wouldn't do that to the kid who's in eighth grade or whatever, but it's an issue, and we have the ADA and so on. And I'm so proud of what me and Sharon are doing around, trying to create a generation who get it and then can advocate, like saying, why is this like that? We learn this in school, right? Why isn't it like that? Yeah. Anyway, it's been great to be on this conversation. And yeah, I mean, please keep in touch. I think I put some of my stuff in the chat, and
Well, maybe Grover's coming in and maybe he's not. But in the meantime, I'm going to tell a story about Yoshiko, because we hear a lot about Justin, but we don't often hear about Yoshiko. And the very first time I met Yoshiko, I don't know why we had this conversation, but we did. So she and I were sitting next to each other at a luncheon, and I asked her, I said, "So how did you and Justin meet?" And because I'd never read anything about how they had met. And she said, "I was a Tupperware lady, and I was selling him some Tupperware." And for those of you who don't know, Justin Dart represents Dart Industries, which is Tupperware. And he was the CEO for Tupperware of Japan, and Yoshiko is from Japan. So she's had this opportunity to sort of be the demo Tupperware lady to show off what what they were doing, and he evidently immediately fell in love with her, and she immediately fell in love with him. And she said one of his favorite things about her was her singing. And asked her, I said, really? I said, so what's his favorite song? And she said, I'll sing it for you. And so right there in the middle of hundreds of people with this very formal lunch, she sang the Tupperware Lady song, which is a very silly, very funny little song that all Tupperware ladies sing at the beginning of a Tupperware conference. But she's this wonderful human being who has so much energy and so much passion for disability rights. But she started out as a Tupperware lady. It just I always think of her and that time of meeting her, and we've stayed in touch ever since. And she's an absolutely wonderful woman who does not want to be put front and center. She wants Justin to be front and center because she thinks she was his support person, and that's her role to this day. Her role is to be supportive of who he is, but I think she's a wonderful human being, and she should be remembered equal to him, because I don't think Justin would be the man he was without Yoshiko behind him.
Well, me and Sharon, we work together, and we're trying to teach a new generation about disability, and that's what we do. So, like I say, I'm 73. I'm getting there, and I'm so proud about having ideas which teach children about this kind of thing that we're all talking about here. And I love Sharon, I love all my team, and I'm good with what I'm doing. I don't know. I think Justin would like to do that as well. I think Justin would like to make sure that another generation lives and grows up knowing about disability from a disabled people's perspective, with lessons that are vetted or created by disabled people. That's what I do. So I'm kind of happy. It's like, what would Justin do? What are you going to do? That's the thing. It's like, and are you happy with what you're doing around disability? Or would you want to do more? And what would that be, right? I mean, I love Justin. I love Wade Blank. I met Wade Blank and people like that, and Ed Roberts and stuff. But we're in a different place now. We're a few years on from that, and we're into social media, Instagram. I don't know, Instagram, blah blah blah. So I mean, for the people who aren't as old as me, you have to think, well, this is where I live at the moment. I live here. I live in 2026, and I've got about maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 years to go yet. What do you want to do with that? You know what I mean? I think that's kind of like the issue. And I think Justin would be happy with the slice of the thing that I want to do. I'm not saying he'd be happy about everything, but for what I'm going to do, he would probably pat me on the head and say, that's not a bad job. That's not a good idea. That's a good idea. Get on with it. And if we need to pass, and we did pass legislation in PA to have disability taught in the curriculum, right? That is a big legal thing. I wish Tony was still here, because that is something which has never been done before. So I'm okay with what I'm doing, but I won't live that long to celebrate the next generation coming out. Not that I'm going to die, but I just don't think I'm going to be 100 to see it. Anyway, I gotta go soon. But it's been great talking to you guys.
Well, I'll just speak up a little bit for indigenous culture, taught to believe that the earth is mother and that we all are related to the plants and animals. Quite a different mindset when you come at the world. And then, of course, you have to go through the world and find out that not everybody's looking at it that way for sure. But, the sense of community is something that I've most noticed has been gradually diminished, over the years. And it's been one of those most sad things to see. Stewardship is how my family regarded being of service and doing things in community and giving as much of yourself as you can to something you really believe you're called to do, feeling that calling. And so for me, that's the thing we could all spend some more time on, leaning into the future, thinking about what kind of world would we like, you know, as opposed to looking behind us and appreciating what a nightmare is about to bite our ass. It's the hope of tomorrow that keeps me going, knowing that things could be better, that we could do it, and believing that. And particularly with people with disabilities, I kind of see trends changing. Technology becomes more local, like to your neighborhood even. And, people make stuff that they need when they need it and maybe don't get so caught up in the fashion of, stuffing. The world's changing now. The supply lines are going to be diminishing, and we're in a scarcity mentality. The government started buying up all the rare metals all over the world, and the price of gold, silver, everything's about to go kaboom, and the dollar's going to, well, anyway, we'll see what happens there. But that all being said, what we have is each other and we have community. And if we pull together, as a community, things get better. And they get better because we want them to be better, because that's our calling. And as long as we're doing that, we can be without fear, without feeling diminished by being a part of something that's ugly and bad, which is kind of what we're required to do when you end up working in a cubicle 8 hours a day so you can pay for daycare and groceries at the Safeway when you could be working in a community garden with your child, having a good day. So hopefully we get it, to come out better on the other side. And I try to tell everyone the best is yet ahead. And the only reason I believe that is because I work with technology, science, art, and I see how very wonderfully we humans are now starting to get smart about doing things. And those things will come forward very quickly and they'll counter a lot of this bad stuff we're dealing with now. So hopefully we could be the leading edge of change, because when you think of accessibility and inclusion, as we all know, anyone can join our club, eh? Anytime, turn the next corner, stand at line at an ATM, get slugged on the head. Hey, you know, how do you want to be treated? How do you want your parents treated? How people have just kind of lost that connection. And the thing that's replaced what used to be politics is something called resentment. Resentment. I just learned this term myself a couple of days ago, but it's an emotion that hasn't been recognized by psychologists. Language is everything in our culture. As you point out, Susan, how the children relate to disability now, defined by methodology, practice, what have you, but it comes up to being a language, a symbolic representation of what we're to think about that kid, who he is and what his potential is and all of that, kind of wrapped up in a language that signals and signifies, and that's the world we live in. We have to think beyond that and kind of get our reptilian brains into gear, to go with what we feel, which is this isn't right. We're not standing for it. We got to change it. All of you do this all the time. I know. I love you all for being there.
In case others are thinking about leaving, should let it be known that next month, the focus is going to be on Alice Wong and intersectionality. And the following month is going to be on Bob Costa and ADAPT. So I'm expecting Alan will be back with ADAPT stories.